Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Canto 3, Chapter 13, the appearance of Lord Varaha, text 11. Sa Tvam Asyam Apatyani Sadrishani Atmanaha Gunai Utpadya Shasa Dharmena Gam Yagyai Purusham Yaja Sattvamasya Apatyani Sadrishanyatmano gunai Utpadya shasa dharmena Gam yagyai purusham yaja Saha. Therefore that obedient son From as you are Asyam in her Apatyani children Sadrishani equally qualified Atmanaha of yourself Gunai with the characteristics Utpadya having begotten Shasa rule Dharmena on the principles of devotional service Gam the world Yagyai by sacrifices Purusham the Supreme Personality of Godhead Yaja worship. Translation. This is Lord Brahma speaking to Swayambhu Brahmana. Since you are my very obedient son, I ask you to beget children qualified like yourself in the womb of your wife. Rule the world in pursuance of the principles of devotional service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus worship the Lord by the performances of yajna. Srila Prabhupada's report. The purpose of the material creation by Brahma is clearly described herein. Every human being should beget nice children in the womb of his wife as a sacrifice for the purpose of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service. In the Vishnu Purana 389, it is stated, Varnashram Dravida Purushena Parakvaman Vishnu Arandyate Panta Nangyata Toshakaranam. One can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, by proper discharge of the principles of Varna and Ashram. There is no alternative to pacifying the Lord by execution of the principles of the Varna-ashram system. Close quote. Vishnu worship is the ultimate aim of human life. Those who take the license of married life for sense enjoyment must also take the responsibility to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and the first stepping stone is the Varnashram Dharma system. Varnashram Dharma is the systematic institution for advancing in worship of Vishnu. However, if one directly engages in the process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it may not be necessary to undergo the disciplinary system of Varnashram Dharma. The other sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, directly engaged in devotional service, and thus they had no need to execute the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Nena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Bhagavatam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Savagamagunatam Vidantam Sajiva Sadvaitam Savadutam Kalyanasasitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Param Savagamadavita Shri Vishakam Vidansa Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopakalanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanuste Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyascha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhattacharya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before I begin, I would like to express my thanks to everyone for allowing me to give this class. I don't feel myself worthy to this, especially in the presence of such exalted souls. I try to get out of it. So, here I am. So, in this verse, Lord Brahma is giving his instruction to Swayambhuva Manu for achieving the goal, which has been on his mind for some time. I looked up some of the other, the earlier chapters, especially I think the previous chapter in which the Kumaras appeared. And Brahma has this big task to perform, which is to populate the universe. Because, as Prabhupada says, the purpose of the universe is, number one, to allow the living entities who had been merged into the body of Mahavishnu to begin again their karmic activities, and especially to reform them, if possible, so that they can escape this bondage of samsara and go back to Godhead. But in order for that to happen, the population has to take birth. Planets are created and the population has to gradually appear. So this is Brahma's first headache, if you will. So we see various false starts in this endeavor. He creates the Kumaras, and he wants them to produce praja, and they refuse. Now he understands that they're doing so for a higher purpose. They want to practice pure devotional service. But still he's angry that his instruction is being refused. But he controls it, but it comes out between his eyes. Right? And the color blue and red, the individual. Rudra. He's named Rudra because he was reduced to this anger. So he asks Rudra to produce the praja. And he starts producing, he expands into 7, he starts producing the praja, but they start devouring the universe. Not good. So he asks Rudra to then start meditating, control, and he takes on this role of Shiva that we know so well. So then the Kumaras didn't work out, Rudra didn't work out. Now we find that Swayambhuva Manu is taking on this task of fulfilling the desire of his father, Lord Brahma, who is also his spiritual master, to populate the universe. Now when Brahma produced he produced various Prajapatis, and after he produced the different Prajapatis, he also produced Narada Muni. Narada Muni came from his discrimination. He came from various parts of Narada's body. And this Narada Muni, he fulfills the real purpose of the universe by giving Nara. Nara is a name for Narayan, for Krishna. Narada, wherever he goes, and he appears more than any other Mahajan actually in the Bhagavatam. Every canto you see Narada appears. And he's always giving just that instruction that's perfect and suitable for the candidate to begin devotional service. So here we find the task being taken up by Swayambhuva Manu. And Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse, Varnashram Chalavata. Now here it's said that there's no other way to please the Lord than by following this Varnashram system. So how does this Varnashram system pertain to us? Because after all, we find in the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or rather the conversation with Ramananda Roy, that this verse was brought up, and Lord Chaitanya said, that's external, go further. This is one of the first verses, answers to the question, what is the final goal of life and how can one achieve it? And yet Srila Prabhupada, as we know, was very eager to have Varnashram established in ISKCON, at least a pilot project. He knew that this had to happen for the society to grow and grow and grow and be a truly international society where people could live and work, raise children, all on the basis of Krishna consciousness. So how do we relate to Varnashram? This is a key question. And one of the things that came to mind is that our whole morning program that Srila Prabhupada set up, which I think we can agree is the foundation of our spiritual life, is this morning program, with a very varied diet. We have deities, worship, so much chanting of Hare Krishna, we have the class. So all the 5 main processes of devotional service enumerated by Srila Rupa Goswami, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, are there in the morning program. Sadhu Sangha, Sankirtan, studying Bhagavatam, in a holy place, worshiping the deity is there. So, in all of that morning program, there's no Varnashram. There's no Varnashram in the Kirtan. When everyone's dancing and chanting and ecstasy, I think, oh, there's a Brahman, there's a Kshatriya, that one's a Shudra. No, nothing like that. And even Harinam going out. There's no question of, oh, this is a Shudra Vaishnava, this is the Brahman Vaishnava. Anyone who has that mentality is living in hell. If you think that a Vaishnava is determined by his birth, that, oh, this is birth in the Brahmin family, then it's a hellish mentality. So much what we do has nothing to do with Varnashram, isn't it? Now, in the evening, Prabhupada mentioned that we all gather together, more kirtan, more class, more worship of the deity, hearing Bhagavad Gita, nectar devotion, the famous ISKCON sandwich, no Varnashram. Now, of course, elders may speak, there may be learned devotees who speak, but basically, we are simply devotees. We're simply bhaktas. And Varnashram doesn't really pertain. Now, but during the day, during the time when we do our service, when we sometimes have to work in order to maintain the family, and there's brahmacharis who are studying, who are doing menial service, who are preaching, there is a structure that Srila Prabhupada wanted to set up, especially in farm communities, which Varnashram, of course, means you must have cow protection, agriculture, rabbinical culture, all these things, which can show a way in which people can be happy in Krishna consciousness, living very simply on the basis of the land and the cows, and working together, and not worrying about the different hierarchy. There isn't this exploitative mentality which we find in the world at large. But it only works when everyone is basically practicing very strict sadhana and getting their enjoyment and their pleasure in life from being Krishna conscious and serving Krishna through whatever duties they may have. So, but it's important to have this Varnashram system because we are living in the world. We're living in a world in which you have to have something to eat, you have to maintain a roof over your head, families are going to be there, and therefore the rules of Varnashram are there. So I wanted to read something very interesting. You know that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this Varnashram system is spoken of mostly in 2 places, if I recall. 7th Canto and also 11th Canto, Sri Krishna has a chapter on Varnashram. Most of the instruction I found in detail in the 7th Canto, where Narada Muni instructing Yudhishthira. Now what I wanted to read, if you'll forgive me, it's a little long list, but what's interesting here is that before he even describes the different varnas and the ashrams to King Yudhishthira, he has a list of qualities that all human beings are meant to cultivate, no matter what varna or ashram you are. And if you don't cultivate them, you can't be counted amongst the human beings. Now, some of you may have read this before, you may not have remembered them all, but I'm going to read them. Srila Prabhupada gives some wonderful commentary. A lot of the interesting commentary is in the synonyms, the word by words. Don't miss out on those when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are the qualities that everyone's supposed to have. Man, woman, any varna, any ashram, to be a human being. Truthfulness, mercy, austerity, cleanliness. Prabhupada gives the insight. Bathing at least 2 times a day, and always chanting the holy name. This internal cleanliness, external cleanliness. So you can see, those are the 4 principles of religion. Also, tolerance, discriminating between right and wrong. Controlling the mind, controlling the senses, non-violence, celibacy, charity, reading the scripture, simplicity, satisfaction, serving saintly persons, gradually taking leave of unnecessary engagements. Seeing the futility of unnecessary actions in human society. Remaining silent and grave and avoiding unnecessary talk. Discriminating between the body and the soul. Distributing food to men and animals. Seeing every soul as part and parcel of God. Hearing Krishna Katha. Chanting these Leela and instructions. Krishna Katha. Always remembering them. Service to the Lord, worshiping Him, offering obeisances to Him, becoming a friend, and surrendering everything. This is the qualities of a human being, regardless of varna and ashram. So what does it sound like? It sounds like the qualities of a devotee. So the idea is that the Srimad Bhagavatam, although it mentions the varnas and the ashrams, and there's some detail there in the instructions of Narada Muni, the central point is always to develop the qualities of devotional service and to be devotees. Everything follows from that. And there's several verses, the most famous of the Kumbhir Vida Shrestha Varnashram Vibhagashaha Swanustitasya Dharmasa Samsiddhi Haritoshanam. That the real purpose of the varna and ashram, the perfection, is to satisfy Krishna or Hari with those activities. If it just becomes some kind of a caste system, in which the upper castes are exploiting the lower castes, this is a great corruption of the varna and ashram system. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he didn't talk about varna and ashram. He spread the Sankirtan movement, the chanting of the holy name. And this brings us to the other point I wanted to cover, which is mentioned in this verse, and that worshiping the Lord through yajna, through sacrifice. This word yajna is here. And in this way rule the world by propagating and ruling over and teaching the proper sacrifices. So sacrifice is a very important part of human life. Human life, without sacrifice, there can be neither happiness in this life nor the next. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter. So what is that sacrifice? Each age has a specific dharma, and in this age, of course, we have the sacrifice of the congregational chanting of the holy name. We also perform other sacrifices. We'll have the homas, and we'll have the fire sacrifices for initiation, marriage, etc. But the prime sacrifice is the sacrifice of Sankirtan, as taught by the incarnation for the age, Yuga Avatar Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now that sacrifice underlies everything. And why is it so important in this age? Well, because it's taught by the incarnation of the age, especially suited to this age. And because of that, this age, and the wonderful thing about it is that even though we're mostly unqualified by birth or education to perform the intricate sacrifices of mentioned in the Vedas, with all the proper mantras, pronunciation, and everything, everybody is completely qualified in this age, no matter who he is, who he or she is, to perform this sacrifice. So it's completely open to everyone. And the wonderful thing about it is that if you practice it properly, under the guidance of spiritual master, and you actually try to avoid the offenses and prosecute it, you achieve the highest goal just by that sacrifice. And therefore it is said in the 11th canto that this Kali Yuga, in which Lord Chaitanya appears, is worship by the demigods and those who understand things as they are. Kaling sabadhyaya gunagya sarabhagina yatra sankirtane naiva sarva svato abhilapite. In describing the different Yuga avatars, he comes to the famous verse, Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, describing Lord Chaitanya. And then a few verses later he says, this Kali Yuga is very special because those who know the essence of things, Sarabhagina, the Aryans, they worship this Kali Yuga. Because just by Sankirtan, all of your goals, Svarta means the real goals of the soul, not these external goals related to the bodily concept, are achieved by this Sankirtan. So, when that yajna is performed nicely, then everything falls into place. One can be satisfied in any position in the organization of Varnashram, because you have that inner satisfaction coming from chanting and dancing and chanting the holy name and doing all the other practices of devotional service that flow from that. This is your satisfaction in prosperity or poverty, cold or heat, health or disease. That is always there because it's pertaining to the soul. And we see great devotees, even in our contemporaries, who are able to remain equipoised and upbeat, even at the time of death, because they were absorbed in the holy name. Recently, I had the great opportunity to be present at the disappearance of Dravida Prabhu. Some of you may know him. He was in a wheelchair for years and years and years. He lived in different places. In the last couple of years, he was living in San Diego. And he had this progressive disease where his body was completely stiff. He had trouble breathing because the muscles of the diaphragm weren't working properly. And yet he was going out on Sankirtan. He was distributing books. And one of our most wonderful bhaktas there, a very nice 19-year-old boy, Dr. Bronson, who is now the full-time book distributor, known him very nicely, he became a devotee because he got a book in the parking lot, Ravana Prabhu. And so did his mother become a devotee. So he was in his last days, he was in the hospital, and he decided that he didn't want to go on the breathing machine and stay going for days and weeks in a nursing home. He had always been able to be in the association of devotees, even though he had this progressive, debilitating disease. And so he decided, let me go, just pull the plug, And he picked the time, he picked the day, and we all gathered there. And it was very peaceful and calm, and chanting, of course, and the dearest friends were there, and off he went, to go. So, next service, So, and then we're not alone. We have experienced now some great souls who have departed. And so, how is that possible? I used to work in a hospital before I joined the movement, and I saw so many non-devotees as they were approaching death, and they're just terrified. It's just shocking. Their whole world is crashing down, especially when it comes suddenly to a heart attack or something. And all of the props, all of the so-called shelter, the fallible soldiers mentioned in that second canto by Shukadeva Goswami, those fallible soldiers have left the battlefield, and you've got nothing left. Suddenly the end is there, and you don't know where you're going, and the doctors will tell you, they start seeing things, the Yamadutas are starting to come. And people are just terrified. And this is where all of their illusion comes to, is this suddenly this shock that they have no shelter because they haven't cultivated devotional service. So this is what it's all working out to now. In the meanwhile, as we live in this world, we're trying to spread devotional service. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility both to preach and also to become Krishna conscious. Because that becoming Krishna conscious and relishing Krishna consciousness is the foundation of spreading Krishna consciousness. If people come in contact with a devotee, and that's where the key is, at becoming in contact with a devotee who's practicing devotional service, who's reading Srila Prabhupada's books and living those books to the best of their ability, and see the stark difference in the mentality. Because all over the world, I live in the United States, but it doesn't really make any difference. The whole world has accepted this so-called philosophy of consuming as much as possible, gaining, accumulating wealth, and buying the petty baubles of sense gratification. When people can understand, I can see, you can just see around you, whether it's in a wealthy country like America or a third world country or whatever, people are not happy with this accumulation of things. It becomes very staid. You know, this is spoken of by Prahlad Maharaj. It says, Kutra Shisha, Shuti Sukha, Megatrishni Rupa, Quedam Kaleva Damashesha Dajam Viroha, Vivididena Tujano Navapiti Vidvan, Hamalam Madhulavaishamayam Doraba. So he's saying there, taking the role of a, well, here he's giving some facts. He says, Kutra Shisha, what use are these desires, these aspirations for material happiness, material pleasures? Shuti Sukha, most of the happiness is in the hearing about it. You know? This is a interesting phenomenon. People, you see the advertisements, right? Then you aspire for something. I want to get the big screen TV, right? Something like that. So you read about it, you think about it, you know, you look at your friends, you know, like that, you know. And so finally, you know, if it's your karma, you're able to accumulate enough wealth to go into debt and buy that huge screen TV. But then after some time, what happens is you find it doesn't make you happy and pleased. First of all, you have to pay off the loan. Then you find that there's so many things on it that just, you know, that are degrading, you know. Then you find your kids getting addicted to it. You know, basically, there's always something that happens that is, you know, not pleasing about material life. And you become, then of course what happens is a bigger one comes out with a high definition. Then you have to jump that one and get another one. So this is what it's all about. He gives it the epithet of Mrigatrishna Rupa. It has the form of a mirage. Mrigatrishna, it comes from the word, the thirst of a deer or an animal. In other words, the animal is looking out from the oasis and looking out in the desert and sees another oasis, runs out to it, and it's not there when it gets there. And he dies. So this is the nature of material life, is that there's always something else to strive for, some other person, some other goal, some other thing, and then you run out of time, or it's not your karma, and you're just disappointed. So he says, and what is the use of this body as a foundation for enjoyment? It's simply an abode of all kinds of diseases. You know. But then he says something very interesting. He says, even if someone knows this, Vidvan, this theme comes up again in the Bhagavatam, still he cannot desist from searching for sense gratification because the mind, the very effort to get the honey-like drops of sense gratification to extinguish the kama, the fire of lust, that effort and that absorption keeps you in the mode of passion. And even though you know theoretically, you cannot act on it. And this brings up another important point I wanted to make. And that is that even as devotees, this is why I said we have a responsibility to become advanced in devotional service, so that we can actually taste the sweetness of the holy name. So we can actually relish the deity, the darshan of the deities, and also relish all of our services, see Krishna within our service, which is, after all, meant to please him. And also to relish the nectar that comes from pleasing the spiritual master and serving the devotees and all other things I listed there. There is a pleasure there that's far beyond anything that the materialist can imagine. But if we find ourselves committing offenses during the holy name, not carefully practicing the principles of devotional service, then even though we may have had a taste, we may lose that taste. And when we lose the taste for devotional service and the taste for the holy name especially, then we are easy prey for mind. Even though we know theoretically, we may have read the Bhagavad Gita 20, 30 times, we may be Bhakti Shastri, still, we have to be careful to cultivate our taste for devotional service and rise up to the platform of firm nishtha, and getting more and more taste and advancing. Otherwise, we can lose that taste and we become prey to the material energy. So this is why, and if we are getting that taste, and if we are feeling happy and satisfied in devotional service, then Varnashram can be built on that platform. Otherwise, it is an artificial construct, and it cannot be maintained. There are too many distractions in this world. There's too many ways in which the material energy can enter in, either through the internet or through your friends who watch the internet and told you something. Or, you see what I mean? There's so many ways. We go out, when we're exposed, if we're not strong, we can easily be drawn away. So to maintain that strength in devotional service is our duty, and it also should be our own personal aspiration. This brings up the point of what are we performing sadhana for? Sadhana means, according to Rupa Goswami, with the sadhya in mind, with the goal in mind. And then the sadhana all makes sense. Even those things that you may not spontaneously want to do, and that is the nature of Vaidhi Bhakti, is that you do it as a matter of duty to the spiritual master and to the previous acharyas, because you understand that this is my duty and it will bring me to the goal. This is called Vaidhi Bhakti. Anukulyena sankalpa praktikulyasya varjanam. Accepting those things favorable, rejecting these things unfavorable. So you do those things because you have your sadhya in mind. I know that at the end of this is prema bhakti, is returning to the spiritual world, or even before physically leaving the body, understanding my relation to Krishna and living in that relationship. It's very advanced, but that's the goal. And so everything else makes sense, and you're willing to perform the sacrifice and undergo the austerity because that goal is in mind. We find in the material world it happens all the time. Someone wants to make $1 million. They want to become very wealthy. Well, they have to start out with a degree, learning business, doing all the difficult things, and when it's, these are great austerities. Oh, at the end of the gold pot, at the end of the rainbow, and then I'll be able to enjoy like anything. It's an illusion, but still the same idea of the sadhya and the sadhana is there. So we should understand, we should read the Srila Prabhupada's books and understand what that goal is. So we'll be enlivened to perform the sadhana bhakti, the elements of sadhana, which are not so pleasing to the senses, but which are, at first, but which are essential to train the mind, train the senses, so that Krishna will reveal himself. That famous verse, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi, Nabave Grayam Indriya, Seva Mukhe Hijivado, Swayameva Skulapidana. That in our present state, our senses cannot really perceive the real nature of the holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna. But if, under the instruction, the direction of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we begin service with the tongue by chanting the holy name, tasting prasad, etc., then the senses become purified, and then one day Krishna reveals himself. He reveals because he's pleased with our efforts. So this is very encouraging. That we may not understand so much, we may not be experiencing what we read about in the books, but we should know that if we practice carefully and we make the effort to advance, that one day these experiences will be there. And we get hints of them anyway. Even in the beginning, we read from Nectar Devotion. How many of us have not been in an ecstatic kirtan, or had some wonderful class in which we got so enlivened, or had some other experience of devotional service? These are all simply little drops of nectar that are drawing us on to the state of Sthaya Bhava, where you'll have ecstasy, steady ecstasy, and build on that. This is part of our line. This is what we're aiming for. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. That's our personal goal. And externally, to somehow or other, by adopting these qualities, and the quality of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was both preaching and also internal relishment, to do good to others. That's one thing I wanted to quote from Krishna himself, when he's describing this idea of sacrifice. How to make your life successful. In his teachings to his friends about the glories of the trees, where after stealing the garments of the gopis, there's a little piece of that chapter in which he starts walking throughout Vrindavan, and he starts praising the trees. The trees are so munificent because they're simply giving the fruits, the flowers, their own wood, the shade, and they never complain. Even the woodsman comes, cuts them down, and you never hear them complain. So he gives them as an example of tolerance and munificence. So he has this very important verse, Prabhupada would quote all the time. Etavat janma sapalyam dehinam dehishu prana artha diya vacha shreya acharana sada. That if we want to make our life fruitful and successful, then for all other living beings, any living being who wants to make his life successful should, for all other living beings, use his prana, life energy, our life, whatever we do, our wealth, our intelligence, and our words, for Shreya, for doing benefit for everyone else. And always do it. Shreya Acharana Sada. So that's the Sankirtan movement. When we dedicate our energy, our intelligence, our words, our wealth, for spreading Krishna consciousness, this is the ultimate good fortune for the whole world. This is the Shreya Kayadeva Chandrika Vataranam. Lord Chaitanya said right in the Shikshastic first verse, that the Sankirtan movement, beginning with the chanting of the holy names and progressing out, spreading the books, everything we do to spread Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, previous acharyas. This is Shreya Acharana Sada. This is doing welfare work for everyone. And that also increases our taste for the holy name. It's mercy. This taste is given by Krishna, and it can be withdrawn if we offend, especially if we offend great devotees or any devotees, or perform other offenses. So, maintaining and increasing our taste for chanting. I wanted to maybe end with a couple of verses in a few minutes for questions. We can pray, we should pray for increasing our attraction to the holy name. This is in the Namashtaka. Rupa Goswami has 2 verses in which he prays specifically for increasing his attraction to the holy name. He says, Akadamana Yashoda Nandano Nandasunu Kamalanayana Gopi Chandra Vrindavanita Pranata Karana Krishna Vidyaneka Swarupe Toy Mamanata Kuchaya Vardatam Namadeya. Oh, holy name, you have many different forms. You give some samples. Akadamana, killer of Agasra. Yashoda Nandana and Nandasunu, son of Yashoda and Nanda. Kamalanayana, you have the beautiful lotus eyes. Gopi Chandra, the moon of the gopis. The gopis are just like the chakora. Their eyes are like chakora birds and they bloom wide when they see the moon of Krishna's face. Vrindavanindra, the Lord of Vrindavan. Pranata Karana, you are most merciful to the surrendered souls, and of course, Krishna. Please you increase my attraction for you more and more. And then the final verse of this Namashtaka, which formed the inspiration for that famous song, Narada Muni Bhajanami by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is Narada Vino Jivana Sudhormi Niyana Samadhi Pura from Krishna Nama Kamam Spudane Vasane Vasena Sada. So he says there, oh holy name, you are the inspiration for the Vina of Narada. Narada Vino Jivana Sudhormi Niyana Samadhi Pura. So this is one of these words that's kind of piled on. So it's a flood of the sweetness of the essence of nectar. Something like that. Narada Vino Jivana Sudhormi Niyana Samadhi Pura. From Krishna Nama Kamam. This word Kamam means if you please, oh holy name. Because it's after all, the holy name is Krishna. He has completely free will. Spudame Vasane Vasena Sada. Please always appear on my tongue with great attraction and taste. So we can pray to the holy name. Now, for the taste. Now one thing that I've been going to these japa retreats, maybe you heard about them. Satyananda Swami has started this new trend, which is very nice. We get together, secluded place, and you just concentrate on improving the japa. So one of the things that I've thought of, and which is motivated, is that because we're by our acharyas, by chanting the holy name, if you chant your japa, and this is our most important service to our acharyas, is chanting our japa, good rounds, 16 rounds of concentration and devotion. You can pray to the holy name, through the holy name, for concentration to hear the holy name. So as you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So, I don't know about you, but when I start chanting the japa, the whole battle is with the mind. The mind's going here, there, maybe nice devotional thoughts. What are you going to do the rest of the day? Big plans, right? Are you going to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world? Whatever it may be. We should be hearing the holy name at that point. So the battle is with the mind. Now we know that Krishna, the name Krishna, is Krishna. Right? We know that. And the name Hare is also Radha. The name Rama is also Krishna himself. So you can pray to the holy name by chanting Hare Krishna for the ability, for the blessing of hearing and concentrating and absorbing your mind in the holy name. Also, you can pray and should pray for pure devotional service. There's so many other prayers. But the idea is that first thing is you have to concentrate. So that prayer, I found that it helps. So I wanted to end with one other verse. This is just a sample of the wealth that we've been given of prayers and shlokas to help us concentrate the mind on Krishna and to become absorbed in Krishna. So he says, Rupa Goswami says, Ujanga de Pachanga Kaspura the Kanda Chudam Kure, Diranka Shadra Ganchada, Brahmina Bhakta Brinda Brahme, Patanga de Vitus Tati, Vunakati, the Kani Kriye, Padaskuda de Me, Mohaspai Mukunda Shudharati. So I put it in the poem. He says, you wear the best of crests, a crown of perfect peacock plumes. Your dancing glances stun the bees, meandering amidst the blooms. You relish love play in the cottage by Kalindi's shore. O Krishna, may pure love for you be mine forevermore. Hare Krishna. So on that note, we have a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes. Krishna Sattva.
Yeah, you can say that famous verse in that line of Ravana Das Goswami, say it to the holy name, Hare Rama.
Radhe Naman of a Sundara Sita.
Yeah, you are thirsty, you play. You tell.
Alright, so.
The people is come for, and you are thirsty, then you put liver, condense some milk, and then the name of Radha.
So, some of you weren't here. This was what I've been doing these slokas in the morning for extra arti before the announcements. And this was the first one I did, so maybe some of you come later, you haven't heard this one, so it's, anyway, a refresh. Radhe Naman of a Sundara Sita Mukdam. Krishneti nam aurabhutagada dugdham sakshamam sodaviraga hivena ramyam kritva tadaiva vivameira sanechurati. So this is from Raghunath Das Goswami's Nalavali, and he says, an excellent fresh nectar with endless subtle tastes. Such is the name of Radha, by whom all 3 worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet. Such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the fragrant ice of love. A prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then at every moment, drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. So this is another thing. In whatever language you speak, write some of your favorite verses into poetry and share them with your friends. This is another nice way to become Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead. Can we have the mic so we can...
You said a number of things which kind of made me think about one of my pet peeves, which is you're standing in kirtan and trying to absorb yourself, perform your yajna and your yajna for the pleasure of the Lord. And behind you, you hear a conversation going on, which has to be kind of loud because the kirtan is going on. And in order for the conversers to hear each other, they have to speak above the kirtan. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that kirtan is the emperor of sadhana. So could you speak a little bit about this? I coined a term for it. I call it Sankirtan.
Sankirtan.
As far as us performing proper sadhana and also entering into the Anandam Buddhi Vardhana, could you speak a little bit
about this. This is maybe I shouldn't hesitate to say it, but I'll say it anyway. It's a disease. It's kind of a disease. The idea, and an extreme example is that we see it in the West more, because here, I mean, these kirtans are overwhelming. Who wouldn't be attracted? At least that's how I feel. But sometimes you find that, geez, there's so much to do. You know, I have to plan, I have to, get ready for the next day, or some business I have to call. Like in the West, when you have the phone. It's very hard to be a GBC on the West Coast of America, because the whole world is woken up, especially in the West. You have to, at 6 o'clock, someone called at 9 o'clock in New York to figure something out. I remember this over here. So somehow or other, kirtan is pushed to the side. You don't have time for it, because what do you really get? I'm not accomplishing anything, and this is the illusion. But actually, without the kirtan, there's nothing. There's nothing. The whole movement rests on that foundation, and so does our Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada was very strict on this point. I remember this story of white, well, I don't know the name, but he's going back to 1967. He was running the press. He was running Prabhupada's first, literally the press. I mean, a printing press was there at Tiffany Place, and he was running that in Brooklyn and putting out Prabhupada's books. And, to start something like that going, and putting the ink in and figuring it out, he was spending all his day. And he told Prabhupada, I don't have time to chant, I don't have time to come to the program. He said, shut down the press and you come to the program. He said, shut down the press and you should come to the program. So, this idea of if it's an absolutely pressing conversation, it should be done outside, minimal amount of time, and then come back into the kirtan. But the idea is that we should not minimize the importance of this yajna, this Sankirtan yajna. This is what we're all about. To be able to become absorbed, and this is also something to hear, to concentrate on the holy name in kirtan. It's nice the dancing and all the relation with the devotees, but if you're not hearing the holy name fully, then you're not participating fully. You're not getting the full benefit. First comes the hearing. Everything is to enhance the hearing and the chanting, absorption. And then everything flows from that. So I would say that should be discouraged, that one can speak politely, please take it outside if it's absolutely essential, life and death, but do not break the mood of the kirtan with this distracting talk. That's my recommendation. That's what I would say. I think probably back me up. Janmashtami Prabhu. And one or two more, I think I get adjourned.
It was very nice class. I'm wondering if you could give us an analysis of the bearing that properly being situated properly in Varnashram has on their capacity to taste the holy name and experience transcendental bliss.
Well, one needs, going back to the mind again, one needs to have a peaceful mind, really, in order to concentrate fully on any aspect of devotional service, especially chanting. If one is not situated nicely in the service, or feels anxiety because your material situation is so disturbing, then when it comes time to do japa, it's time to do kirtan, you won't be able to concentrate and have a peaceful mind. So this kind of organization is important for the whole universe. This is why he's saying do it for the whole universe. What to speak of our little universe of ISKCON is that we need the leaders need to find ways to create a facility and an environment in which devotional service can flourish. And when we're dealing with families, jobs, and trying to maintain things like that, then Varnashram is the best way to do it. Progressive development of renunciation through the ashrams, and being situated according to one's psychophysical nature, and the position of women, which I didn't get into, what their role is, all of that is within Varnashram. Then, when it comes time to practice devotion, one can be peaceful in doing it. This is how I understand it, is that's the relationship. Now, without the bhakti, Varnashram has no meaning and it will dissipate. So the strict adherence to devotional principles underlies the success of Varnashram, and Varnashram itself can help one have a peaceful mind and confidence and so that he can practice devotion. All right, one more and then we'll adjourn, because I know it's time.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a very excellent class. One thing got me very confused though when you mentioned the list of Prabhupada about the minimum qualifications for being a human being. It sounded to me like as though it defeats the very purpose of Varnashram Dharma. If on one hand you require from the general population that they become devotees, first of all. But to speak of devotees, that all the qualities you mentioned were Brahmanical qualities. It's like whether you're a Shudra, a Vaishya, or a Kshatriya, you've got to be a Brahmin, basically. I can't quite get my head around this one, and how we can convince even a single person about this very point about Varnashram Dharma, if we are not ourselves more clear. And I hope maybe you can clarify that.
This isn't Prabhupada's list. This is Krishna's list. I read it straight out of the Bhagavatam. It's straight from Narada Muni, Yudhishthira. What I get from this is that the prime necessity is to be a devotee, no matter who you are. And as far as the Varna and Ashram, that all after all pertains to the body. What Varna you're in, what you're going to do to maintain the body and soul together. But if the devotional qualities are there, primary, now they may not all be, achieved at once, but this is what you have to strive for. Even the Shudras, what does the Shudra mean? Manual laborer. Jayananda was a manual laborer. He was making the juggernaut carts, right? He was driving around in his cab. But was he a Shudra? In the kind of pejorative? Of course not. He was developing these qualities, So the understanding here is that you can't get around the need to develop devotional qualities, no matter who you are. That's what separates the human and the animal species, basically. Two-legged animals. So once you establish yourself in these qualities, or at least aspiring for them and trying to develop them, then the other aspects of Varnashram, the bravery and the managerial quality of the Kshatriya, and the ability to make money of the Vaishya, all of that falls into place. But if you get carried away, by the fact that you can make a lot of money, and you're chanting your rounds while thinking of your business, then that's not what it's all about. That means that that's not really Varnashram. So that's why I stressed here the foundation, morning program, the strong sadhana, then everything else falls into place. Otherwise, it becomes confused and it doesn't have any meaning. All right, we have to end there. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Dravida Prabhu ki.